the first aspect in which economics has to change is it needs to go beyond its vision of pure individualism. Homo economicus is an individual making autonomous decisions. And that overlooks something terribly important. And it's something I believe that India is far more in tune with than the West. And that is, we operate as human beings at different levels of functional organization. We can operate as individuals, but we can also operate in groups, and each of us belongs to groups of many different constitutions and sizes, religious groups, cultural groups, national groups, sports groups, etc. And that aspect has been completely overlooked, and that is terribly important because the global problems that you have mentioned, the pandemic, climate change, they are problems that affect all of humanity. And therefore, it's necessary to address those problems at that level, at the level of the world. And looking at things at a national level, global level, selfish level, just totally inappropriate. We have the ability to do so as human beings, but economics is not allowing us to address this ability. So to bring that into economic analysis would be really important.
We seem to know how to make economic growth faster, and indeed had, with the so-called liberalization of the Indian economy since the 1990s. In fact, we boasted that India was the fastest growing free market economy in the world, just behind China. However, there were dangerous warnings that the pattern of growth was neither environmentally nor societally sustainable. India was the most water-stressed large country in the world, and the Indian economy was generating fewer jobs per unit of growth than other economies. And this was tragic in a country with the largest population of youth in the world, who were expected to provide a demographic dividend to growth, provided they had jobs and could earn and save money. At that time, the world was struggling through the consequences of the global financial crisis, the 2008 and onwards. Growth had slumped. Economists said they must discover a new normal economics because the old economics did not have solutions. The Nobel laureate economist Michael Spence, who chaired the International Growth Commission of Economists and Policymakers, said on the release of the report here in Delhi, mainstream economics had solutions for how to make growth faster, but not how to make it inclusive. Dennis, at a time now when the IPCC have declared code red on the environment, and the COVID pandemic has exacerbated further the inequities in the world, where the rich have vaccines and the poor do not, and stock markets are booming, while hundreds of millions have lost their sources of incomes. What do you think are the fundamental shifts that must take place in mainstream economics for it to be a useful guide for the progress of humanity?
I think mainstream economics will have to change fundamentally, and it will have to do so in at least 5 respects that I'd like to summarize. And these 5 respects are simplifications that economists have of reality, but they are not harmless simplifications. I'd argue that they are harmful simplifications that prevent us from grasping the potential of the future. So the first aspect in which economics has to change is it needs to go beyond its vision of pure individualism. Homo economicus is an individual making autonomous decisions. And that overlooks something terribly important. And it's something I believe that India is far more in tune with than the West. And that is, we operate as human beings at different levels of functional organization. We can operate as individuals, but we can also operate in groups, and each of us belongs to groups of many different constitutions and sizes: religious groups, cultural groups, national groups, sports groups, etc. And that aspect has been completely overlooked. And that is terribly important, because the global problems that you have mentioned, the pandemic, climate change, they are problems that affect all of humanity. And therefore, it's necessary to address those problems at that level, at the level of the world. And looking at things at a national level, global level, selfish level, just totally inappropriate. We have the ability to do so as human beings, but economics is not allowing us to address this ability. So to bring that into economic analysis would be really important. Secondly, economics sees relations between individuals as socially disengaged. We trade in the marketplace. All we need to know about one another is the prices at which we trade. That, I think, is dangerous rubbish, because economies are human constructs and they are embedded in societies, and social relations are the primal force that drive everything. Even most of our economic relations are permeated by our social relations. And therefore, I think what we need, therefore, is to understand fully what we need to do internally and externally in order for these socially relations to be cooperative and enable us to achieve our goals. And this requires, and here I've learned so much from your books, Arun, it requires systems thinking, seeing the whole, which I claim we can do via our collective objectives, our group identities. And it also requires something terribly important, which you have emphasized, which is deep listening. Listening without preconceptions to people who are unlike us, and thereby able to take on other perspectives. And particularly nowadays, where we have got these huge global problems that affect everyone, seeing things from many different perspectives is going to be terribly important. And only then will it be possible to engage in empathy, mind reading, compassion, loving kindness, all the things that we need in order for us to connect in adequate social relations. So that's the second point. The first was individualism. The second is socially disengaged behavior. We need to drop that. Third is to see our ignorance primarily in terms of risk. That is, anything we don't know, we can attach a probability to, and then our probability calculus allows us to calculate exactly what we need to do. And instead, we need to understand the intrinsic unknowability of the universe. It is beyond our comprehension, and therefore we face primarily not risk, but uncertainty. And uncertainty, not only because we don't know the probabilities, but because we cannot anticipate the events that lie ahead. And we also don't know whether the concepts that we use are adequate to analyze the events. So these are uncertainties on many different levels, and that requires a different approach to economics. It requires, I would say, a theory pluralism. We need to keep in mind as many theories as we can that are compatible with the facts, and then keep an open mind across these theories in order to be able to navigate our environment. Because the evolution of human affairs is a non-stationary process. So the forecasting tools we use all assume that everything we do is a repeated experiment, and therefore what holds in the past will continue to hold in the future. That is completely untrue, and particularly in times of great change like what we're going through. The fourth is to see well-being entirely in terms of consumption-driven utility, which economists tend to do. The more consumption we have, the better off we are, and that's it as far as well-being is concerned. Instead, we need to see well-being as a multifaceted, context-dependent entity. And we have developed in Global Solutions a dashboard called SAGE, S-A-G-E. And S stands for solidarity, and that means our connectedness, our embeddedness in society. A stands for agency, which is empowerment, the ability to shape your fate through your own efforts. G stands for material gain. That's what economists generally are after. And E stands for environmental sustainability. And if each of these parts of the dashboard are doing well, the society is holding together, people feel empowered, they have enough material well-being to support their basic needs, and they're not killing the environment. Such a country is doing well.
Crystal gaze into the near future with our series Be Inspired that takes you into the world of AI, medicine, space, good governance, economy, and so much more. Subscribe to our channel now.